What is up, animal allies? All right, as folks join us here, my question of the day to you all is who has been the most influential and inspirational person in shaping the activist you are today? Who has been the most influential and inspirational person in shaping the activist you are today? Go ahead and comment. Whether it's another activist or an author or content creator or filmmaker or rescuer, go ahead and share in the comments. We'd love to know. All right, so welcome to Letters to the Editor, Writing as Animal Activism with author, activist Robert Rieck. Tonight, you will discover why letters to the editor are a powerful form of activism, perhaps underutilized, yes? How to choose media outlets and newspapers, how to organize, format, and creatively craft your letter, and why letters to the editor have powerful impact for the animals. So we're glad Robert's here to share his experience. Before we start, Animal Activism Collective is a support system and a resource designed to empower grassroots activism. AAC was created to equip activists with the tools, community, and resources they need to boldly participate in our global animal liberation movement. AAC offers a free 3-month mentorship program, free educational live streams and training, a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person collaborative events around the country. In fact, AAC is heading to Los Angeles, California with CAFT and ICAW, January 23rd through February 1st, 2026. Register now for 10 action-packed days of impactful animal rights activism. And just announced this week, join our Grassroots Animal Rights Summit in Washington, D.C. from May 15th through 17th, 2026 for 3 powerful days of learning, connection, community, and action. And we'll put the link tree in the comments. So, and a glimpse is more convergences are coming in 2026. So stay tuned to our social media. You won't want to miss those announcements. All right, then on to our program. Robert Rieck is a writer, author, and activist who has published a book called Spoken, a memoir sprinkled with a little quadriplegia. Your questions are welcome after his presentation. So Robert, welcome. Welcome, and take it away. It's nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you, and we're really honored that you're here to share your particular expertise and your wisdom in this area of using writing letters to the editor as activists. So go
Well,
ahead.
absolutely. But, I don't even consider myself an expert on that because
Yeah.
I don't want people to be like, well, I can't be an expert. I
Mhm.
just want people to really realize that where I came from, I mean, I had no real training in it. So it just was a little bit of peer pressure to do it. And I'll explain that in my presentation also.
Sounds
So,
good.
all right. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen right now. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yes.
All right. Clicking through all these buttons here. All right, here we go from the beginning. So, most of what I'm going to present today is writing a letter to the editor of a local newspaper. However, the information I share can include leaving online comments attached to other articles, sending letters to online or physical magazines, leaving Google reviews at businesses, calling a business to give feedback, etc. Here are 4 areas that I'm going to be talking about tonight. A little bit about me, my LTE process, writing an LTE, and LTEs create social change. So during my younger years in public schools, writing was intimidating. I was very uncomfortable reading books. I didn't like it. So when my teacher assigned me to do a book report, I dreaded doing these. So I had to intentionally go down to the local library and find the smallest book with the largest font. However, during my years in college, English and writing was challenging but more enjoyable because learning to write was an outlet for my physical disability. I am a C5 quadriplegic with paralysis from the neck down. This is a cool picture of me in my manual rugby wheelchair. In 2012, my writing skills began to improve because I went to college to receive an education to become an alcohol and drug counselor. As an alcohol and drug counselor from the years 2014 to 2019, I wrote several hundred substance use evaluations, which needed to be written with objective facts in a factual writing style. There is only a small section in these evaluations entitled Clinical Impression where I could leave my professional opinion, but still avoided absolutes or certainties. In 2019, I became a full time animal rights vegan activist with the Humane League. In this position as a captain, I was supposed to find leaders in different segments of different things. One of the things I did put off is writing LTEs because I've never done that before. Instead, I was looking for a leader to do it, someone I thought had more skills, more interest. However, I didn't find anyone for a while, and I was receiving pressure from my field organizer to at least starting writing LTEs until I could find someone else to replace me. So I started writing LTEs as a volunteer changemaker captain in November of 2019. As of date, I have successfully published LTEs in 10 different Nebraska newspapers, a total of 75 times. My LTE process. First off, the process I am going to be sharing with you may sound like a lot of work, but I like to put in a lot of work initially so as to make each letter I write to go smoother and faster and to be printed without errors. Unlike leaving like a Facebook post, you can go back and correct your errors. But if you make an error and submit it to a letter to the editor, and the editor misses it, it's forever in circulation. So since going vegan in December 4th, 2015, I continually notice or have come across different vegan related studies, stories, or resources, which has had me create digital folders to access information of a particular subject when it is relevant. Folder names such as hunting, farming, biodiversity, carbon footprint, arts, vegan startup sites, health, social justice, and thought provoking quotes, etc. This way, no matter what subject is important to people in their lives, you can provide legit, convincing information showing a vegan lifestyle choice complements their own professed values and morals. This is what I have in my vegan LTE folder. Starting with, I have saved hyperlinks of all the Nebraska newspapers for easy access for me to submit an LTE or to check if an LTE of mine was published. I list all the newspapers that have been dead ends to note either not to waste my time with them or to challenge me to come up with a creative letter to see if I can finally get into these newspapers. What I mean by dead end letters is it's an editor who has never published one of my letters and they neither have responded to my email or my phone calls. I list, hold on. Oh, yeah. I list every newspaper's restrictions, such as word count. Some papers have a restriction of 250 words, some 300, some go all the way up to 500 and more. Some newspapers have a restriction that if you submit an LTE to them, you cannot submit it to any other newspaper for print consideration. This is important to think about because for me, I may want my LTE to go to several newspapers so I can increase the likelihood that one or more of these newspapers will print it. Also, if your LTE is printed, all newspapers have about a 30 to 45-day lag wait time before you could submit another LTE for consideration. I list the names of the editors that I'm submitting LTEs to include phone numbers and emails and other relevant information that's important. This doesn't mean you have to gather all this information at once, which sounds like a lot of work. Just do it as it arises. For example, say your LTE is not getting published that you submitted. Just give them a call. During that call, you may find out the name of the editor or who they are. During that call, write that name down, record it, so you have it next time. I write down the date that I submitted the LTE, to which newspaper the LTE content was sent. I think it's important to save the LTE content. Sometimes the editor will leave out information or they will reword what you wrote. The importance of this is this helps you write future LTEs that are more easily print worthy of that particular editor. I believe the less work an editor has to do on a submitted LTE, the more likely it will be chosen to be printed. I list the date my letter was accepted because, as I mentioned, I will not be able to qualify for another print for another 30 to 45 days. And when I was really at my prime, as soon as I was able to get another letter submitted, I would submit one right at that 30 to 45 day mark because I wanted to get in there again. All right, let's talk about writing an LTE. You can write an LTE in response to a newspaper article by identifying the name of the newspaper, the name of the article, the newspaper section the article is in, and the date. I give as many details as possible so the editor can easily find it. Sometimes minimize these details if the information is going to go against your word count. Also, if you do not have a regular subscription to a newspaper, like myself, you can often view newspapers online, sometimes getting newspaper deals, for example, like 3 months for $1. All right, so sometimes I write LTEs from my own vegan activism writings, or from perhaps a response I'd given someone on Facebook, or someone I was communicating to by text, or inspirational readings. They all can work. Sometimes I write an LTE in association with a nonprofit animal rights organization, campaign, or calendar observance. When I write LTEs initially, I don't think about anything else, but I think about the word count. I'm getting better at using objective language. And one of the means I was able to do that is reading books like this one by Melanie Joy. I believe it's very important to write to your audience like they have an eighth grade education. This is not implying that they're stupid, but there is a lot to learn about being vegan. So, to be simple, to create curiosity in them is going to have them start looking into it. Watch out for plagiarism. That's when you use a quote from another writer and you're using it as if it was your own. I know I have been guilty of this at least a couple times in some of my past letters that I later noticed. Accidents do happen, but it's important that you watch out for that. I think it's important to use questions to allow the reader to answer themselves and entice curiosity so that they personally check it out for more information. If you're going to voice your opinion, make sure you own it by stressing that it is your opinion rather than a fact or an absolute. So instead of using phrases such as, open quote, this is how it is, close quote, open quote, this is fact, close quote, open quote, there's no other way, close quote, open quote, this is the truth, close quote, try using phrases such as, open quote, I would like to believe, close quote, open quote, in my opinion, close quote, open quote, from what I can tell, it appears, close quote, open quote, this is a truth. I think it's important to communicate your reader, use creditable sources and cite the LTE. Creditable sources is about learning the weaknesses and strengths of sources. Every source that's out there has a weakness and strength. Try to choose the ones that have the highest strength. And while you're doing this, use critical thinking skills. Okay, so in my opinion, what I'm going to say to you next is one of the most important guideline and reminder to filter the communication content of every letter that you write. So here it is. It involves love. So communicate to your reader as if it was someone that you love. Better yet, possess a genuine love for people and communicate in a way that you believe that is in their best interest. I'll say that again. Communicate to your reader as if it was someone you love. Better yet, possess a genuine love for people and communicate it in a way that is in their best interest. You accomplish this by practicing integrity, which has three components of curiosity, compassion, and empathy. That last sentence was from Melanie Joy. After you write an LTE, but before you submit it to a newspaper, let a friend who can provide constructive criticism read it and give their opinion for editing. I have also suggested in the past to put the letter aside for up to a week because when you initially write something, you're writing it with a writer's perspective, thinking you are effectively communicating specific points to a reader. However, if after you finish an LTE and not look at it for up to a week, when you go back to rereading it with a reader's perspective, and now you may notice how your words were not sufficient to communicate what you wanted the reader to get out of the writing. Here's a small example. Let's say you write yourself a note and you misplace that note for a week. You pick it up off the floor, you find it, and you're like, what the heck was I even trying to say to myself? That's an example of how it is. Now we have ChatGPT. So you can also use ChatGPT, but I think it's very important to ask this question, which is, can you correct any writing errors without destroying authorship? The reason I say that is because you're staying honest and true to yourself that this is what you wrote, and you're staying honest and true to the newspaper that you're telling them that you wrote that also. Now you can start checking your word count, make corrections to be accepted into the newspaper. Then after that, you can start submitting your LTE. Let's say you wrote an LTE that had 400 words. So I'd suggest going online, finding newspapers in your local community that will accept a word count of 400 words. And then take 50 words off. So you have 350. Again, find newspapers that will take 350. Submit that. And keep doing that in 50 word increments, usually down to about 250 or 200. As long as your letter is legible, and it's what you wanted it to say, then just keep doing it so it gets into as many newspapers as possible. So now I'm going to temporarily exit out of my PowerPoint presentation because I'm going to show you how to look up Google Alerts, how to search your name on an online newspaper, how to comment on an article, and finally, how to submit online. So first, I'll minimize this. We'll go over here. Okay, so you can go to your search engine that you're using, type in Google Alerts. I already did that so I could be prepared for this presentation. And you just click on Google Alerts and this is what shows up. And this is my Google Alerts. Yeah, obviously you're probably not going to have anything if you've never done it before. In this field, you can type in the subject that you want to be notified about. Notice I even have my name because my name's pretty unique. So anytime that my name is used, it's a good indication that I got an LTE published. Another thing you can do, after you set up a Google Alert, when you click on it, you can choose how often you get notifications. I don't mind being notified as most. Oh, that one says at most once a day. Usually, I don't. I have this set to anytime something's relevant, which I should change that. You can choose whatever region. This says any region. You can choose in the United States, and then it says only best results. You can also choose other results too. So that's how you do the Google Alerts. Now we're going to jump into the Norfolk Daily News. This is an online newspaper that has published several of my LTEs, and it's in a small farm town, which is cool that they still publish. And that's the whole purpose, right? Is to publish works for animals to show that they have consideration. So I'm going to show you how we can search your name. So basically, most newspapers have those three links that I just clicked on right here, these three bars. It's the menu. So in the menu, you got a search box. You can type your name in there, click search. This is the page that's already generated from that search. So I'll scroll down here a little bit to show you all the LTEs that I have published here at Norfolk Daily News. And then I'll show you something funny. I saw when I was practicing this too. It reminded me again what happened. And so notice all these LTEs have a dash in between it so that's the name of the LTE. That's the person that wrote it. And so when I got notification, this is what I get from this one. Don't eat real chicken, Robert Rieck Jr. So that one's kind of funny. So I'm going to see if I can demonstrate on how to just leave a comment on an article, whether it's like another activist article that got published. Sometimes you can support them by leaving a comment on there, or say you're commenting in an article and you want to give a different perspective, right? And so some online newspapers have that. I don't know if this is going to allow me to do this. I've done it. Yeah, I've done it so many times during practice. They're like, Robert, you've been here too much, so they're not going to let me show you how to do that. But usually, by the name of the title of the article, there is a little like chat box, and you can click on that chat box, and usually you can sign up to leave comments, and it doesn't have to be approved. It instantly goes through. Of course, there's criteria that you can't leave really, negative comments or really bad, inappropriate comments, but that's how they do that. So now I'm going to show you how to submit to online, submit your LTE online. Again, you can click on that menu. So a lot of papers, this one not, but a lot of papers have a section that says opinions, but it also says opinions, and it says submit a letter. This one doesn't. If you click on opinions here, it just takes you to opinions for you to read. But you just have to browse a little bit. There is a thing down here called submit. So we're going to click on the submit. You're going to get lots of pop-ups, so I apologize for that. It's going to scroll down here a little bit so I can show you what we're looking for. Here's what we're looking for. So it says letter to the editor. Click on that. Sorry, my screen is so white that you can't even see my field boxes very well. But if you notice underneath contact information, it has these red asterisks and all the information that is required for you to put in those fields for them to accept your letter. Scroll down further, and here's where you type your letter right here. And then there's a word limit right here, so it tells you the word limit. So there's your criteria. Some people, they want to be involved in writing letters, but they're like, I don't really want to use my name. So what I would suggest you do to get around that is to send a letter by mail. So find out the address to submit an LTE by mail, and then just explain to them. You have to provide your name, your address, and all that stuff. But you can also say, if you were to print my letter, can you please refer to the person that wrote this as such and such, and give your reasons. And I would like to believe that most editors, if you explain it well enough, that they will provide that as a reasonable accommodation. All right, guys, let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to go over here. All right, I'm going to start with this slide. Okay, so the next several slides, I am going to give you examples of subjective language and how to turn it into objective language. Subjective word tortured. So using the word tortured is subjective and can be turned into objective language by simply describing the accepted standard animal farming practices. Many people reading this objective language could then form their own opinion, and likely it could be a word such as tortured. The only difference is instead of you telling them it's tortured, they created it. And by them creating it, that's going to make much more of a meaningful change in their lives. All right, next slide. All right, greedy killers or careless polluters. These are are examples of subjective, opinionated name calling when people actually learn the facts of what's going on again in these factory farms. They themselves form a name calling opinion. I believe you lose professional credibility when you start calling people names, because then people think you're emotional rather than rational with facts. Okay, so after submitting your LTE, go to Google Alerts, just like I showed you. Put in specific like lines that are very unique from your LTE, or phrases, or your name, so that you're actually notified if your LTE was published. Or you could type in stuff that maybe you're really good and knowledgeable about a certain subject, in regards to animal agriculture. Put that in so that you could receive story opportunities for future LTEs. You can also go to the online newspaper and search your name, like I said. If it gets published, the editor is not going to give you a call and say, hey, guess what, Robert? We published another one of your LTEs. It doesn't happen. It would be nice, but they don't have time for that. So I think it's important, also, to wait 3 or 4 days, but after you submit your LTE, but then to follow up with the editor. There's different ways you can do this. Don't be shy to call the newspaper and identify yourself. Give them information to locate the letter. Ask them if they thought it was complete, sound, and worthy of print. If they do not like it or won't print it, ask them if they could give their professional opinion on how they might improve, how the might they I'm sorry, how the letter might get improved. Be sincere. Thank them for their time. You could easily have 1 to 3 weeks waiting period before your LTE is submitted, because there's a lot of people that do submit to LTEs. So just create a genuine, simple, civil relationship. On the right here is an example of an email exchange between myself and Mike, who was the editor of the Grand Island Independent here in Nebraska. And he was the only editor that would repeatedly respond back to every submission I sent. So I always appreciated him for doing that. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem you can control the title given to your letter, and so you may submit a letter to several newspapers, and depending on how the editor felt after reading it is usually indicated in the title that they place on your letter. Sometimes I don't like these titles, but I'm glad that they may feel that way. For example, reading through my LTEs, you will see the following titles given to the same letter. Title 1, Loving Animals Yet Eating Them is Hypocrisy. I would not choose that as a title, because I'm going to be turning folks away immediately from reading that. Title 2, same letter, Taste Doesn't Have to Suffer on a Healthy Vegan Diet. I'm like, yeah, thumbs up, that's great, right? Title 3, Injustice for Animals. All right, so once you have a letter published, consider calling your editor and thanking them. Post your LTE link online. Also, when you post it online, it's going to be the link to the LTE, but a lot of people are going to click on it and they're going to be like, oh, well, you have to have a subscription to read this. And then they don't get it. So what I always do is I paste also in your post, your social post, everything that was in that LTE. So that's how I do it. All right, let's talk about how LTEs create social change. Yes, we need some good social change. People get caught up in the habitual normalcy of their handy down behaviors that they don't even realize their actions may be unjust and fueling unnecessary violence. So, a LTE can introduce an issue people haven't even thought about. Reframe how an issue is perceived or correct misinformation. A well written LTE to the editor can be the source of providing and allowing a different perspective. A small example of correcting misinformation is when animal farmers repeatedly say they're feeding the world. We can provide a letter to the editor showing that there are smaller percentages of animal proteins actually feeding the world compared to plants. They act as public persuasion, sparking conversations at work, online, and in local communities. I believe the more a subject is shared and talked about, the more it becomes digestible and accepted. Elected officials and their staff monitor local newspapers closely to understand what their constituents care about. Several letters to the editor on the same topic can signal a growing concern. I think this is most effective if there are also a variety of authors submitting letters. For example, I hook up with a friend sometimes and I'll be like, hey, I just submitted an LT on this date. Can you wait a week later or two and submit yours? And then we kind of balance it out. So we always have a letter about animals in circulation. I also think when people read letters about animal consideration, especially in small towns, because a lot of people do have that urge to feel that animal consideration. But after they read a letter, it gives them permission to write similar supportive letters to the editor. Policymakers may reference public opinion to justify action. LTEs can encourage readers to contact officials directly. Writing a letter to the editor, they serve as public pressure indicators. LTEs amplify local voices, especially in smaller communities. In local or regional newspapers, letters often have more credibility weight. Community members often know each other, which increases this credibility. Editors may follow up with reporters and turn LTE issues into full stories. They are accessible activism. Not everyone can organize rallies, lobby, or fund campaigns. Letters are low to no cost, accessible, and they're supposed to be democratic. And if you're having problems getting a letter printed, you can kind of remind that editor, hey, we're in America, we're democratic. Come on, let's get on board. A single letter can inspire others to speak up, creating momentum. LTEs become part of public record. That means they're there forever. Letters often rank highly online, get shared on social media, and are archived. They build long term visibility for an issue. They influence future researchers, activists, or journalists. You and I, too, have probably posted a post from someone on your social media platform. So realize you are able to do this because of it being part of public record. So this is why activism is so effective, using letters to the editor, because it will always be there. All right. LTEs help movements demonstrate consistent concern over time. So part of my presentation, a lot of the photos that I had in this presentation were made free and available if I were to give photo attribution to this website here. So I'm doing that. And also, I want to give a shout out to my caregiver, Austin, who works two jobs and goes to school. And she decided that she's going to make time to watch this long, lengthy live presentation. So she's part of my care team. I have a care team of people at First Care that help it so that makes it possible for me to choose to live a meaningful life to include helping people and helping animals. All right, guys, thank you very much. And now I'm going to stop sharing screen, and I'll be able to answer some of your questions.
Robert, that was excellent, really fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I learned so much. Yeah, we are opening it up now. Folks can start putting their questions in the comment section, and we will try to get to those and let Robert answer those. But Robert, while we're waiting for some questions from folks, so you said you've gotten 75 letters published in 10 across in 10 newspapers, right? Across Nebraska. Is that like over since when? When did you start doing that?
Since 2019.
Since 2019. And did you stick with local newspapers deliberately because the issues were local, or were they all animal rights related? And what response from readers? Like, has there been any response? Readers writing letters back to you or reaching out to you, trying to find you online and reaching out to you, and any results for the animals?
Um, I'd have to go back in all those. But all right, so first of all, the first question, why am I selectively choosing Nebraska? Because so many people are like, you live in Nebraska, what can you do for activism there? It's the beef state. I mean, that's our primary source of income in Nebraska is animal agriculture. And I'm like, well, I'm in the perfect place to do it, right? And so when you read through my letters, which I hope we could share my Word document of all my letters, you will see that many of my letters, I was for workers that are forced to work in these slaughter plants. And most of my letters, yes, they were for animals. And a lot of my letters were literally a call out to farmers. And there's a lot of my letters that got printed that, like the call out to the farmers, which was really cool because the editor, I put links to like places like Transformation. These are um, entities that help animal farmers transition out of animal farming and take up plant-based farming. And so they would put hyperlinks in the article so people could check it out. And so I felt like that worked out well. There was even a point where some of the people at Transformation contacted me and they're like, Robert, we don't want you to mention our name anymore right now because we are now working with Nebraska farmers. So I don't know if that was a direct result. I mean, I'd like to believe it could have been, um, but it was cool that they contacted me. It was cool to know that there are lots of farmers right now in Nebraska that want to get out of animal farming. And I also have a friend that works for the state who he says the applications are so thick of farmers trying to get out of animal farming in Nebraska that it's a slow process to go through them. And so I answered one question. What is there? Was there other parts of that question I missed?
Any results for the animals as a direct result of your letters, or the beginning of a result that you can talk to?
I don't know any. I don't know if I had actually any results.
Okay.
Um, I get people that will write other letters supporting it. Like I've noticed people in like Hastings, a lady in Hastings writing in support, and she'll have my name. So in her LTE that she wrote, she's from a small town in Hastings. She wrote something about me that she agreed with it, and she wrote an LTE that was totally supportive for animal consideration. And I thought I was getting a notification of an LTE that I got printed. So it was cool that to see someone else in a smaller town doing that. There was one time in Omaha that there was a gentleman that wrote a really mean LTE against what I had wrote,
Mm.
as if, and he was just discrediting any effort to be a better person, a more compassionate person. And what was cool about that is by him doing that, it relives my original LTE, because then people can see what he was responding to. Okay. And then there was a lady in Omaha that responded back to him to counter him and to defend my LTE. So all these conversations, that's what it creates.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've also seen people where, I was talking about just leaving comments in the comment box of an article. Many times you will see that there's conversations going on in there.
Mm.
And I'm surprised in Nebraska that there's equal weight to animal consideration and those trying to defend their practices. And it's kind of cool to see that.
So interesting. It's almost like your letters have a half life, right? And initially they go out and people read them, but then you're right, the responses bring it, just keep looping it back to you, and people read it again over time. And like you said, these letters live on the internet forever, which is a cautionary tale sometimes, that most things live on social media at least forever. So be careful, folks, what you put out there. You can't necessarily take it back. But I just wanted to circle back because you mentioned transformation, and I just wanted to spotlight that because I'm also familiar with that project from Mercy for Animals that Leah Garces started, and it's to help farmers transition from farming animals to specialty crops. It's a wonderful program.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for correcting me.
So somebody had a comment, and we have some questions coming in. Robert, you're sparking some questions, so that's awesome. From Skyjack Morgan, I literally just found out that my LTE got published today. I only checked because Robert said to in the beginning of this. Stoked. Look at that.
Good
What a nice
job,
girl is that?
Sky.
Oh, our job is done here. Our job is done. It's all. Do
See,
you
now
another?
you're stoked, Sky, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I got to write another one and another
That's
one.
right. It's addicting. It's addicting. And when you start one, you gotta keep going with that momentum, right? No, it's awesome.
Yeah,
And
that's what happened.
another question is, do you know how many people your LTE reaches? Like, I guess, is there a do they aggregate the any numbers that you can see on that? Or not really?
I don't think specifically an LTE. You just have to look at the newspaper and what their circulation audience is. And, hopefully they read it. I do think opinionated pieces are hot. They're hot in Nebraska because, like I said, in Nebraska, it takes 1 to 3 weeks to get an LTE published because they're backlogged on LTEs. So people are reading them.
Wow, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. Um, yeah, that there's actually a demand. They need our letters. That's why they're there, and they want to showcase those. So, a question from Josh Baldwin is,
Mm-hmm.
any tips for titles, short or long or descriptive or phrased as a question? I know you said even if you submit a title, they won't necessarily use it unless it's a regular article that you're writing, right? Then you write your own title. But I guess any tips for creating a title?
All right. So I'm usually long winded when I write. So, I mean, it's like 400, 350. It's exact, right? And maybe, um, so I don't try to submit a title. Um, if you may want to, you could try doing that. Maybe I'll try that too to see if that will actually work. But I just usually um, I just am more concerned about what I wrote and get it all in there. So, but another thing is when you if you're responding to an online article, all you have to do is highlight that URL, and that URL looks long, right? But when you paste that in there, it only counts as one word, so you don't have to worry about that going against your word count too much.
Cool. Question from Tenebrae is, do you need to understand your audience demographic, or are you more focused on the animals issues?
No, you need to I think you need to understand your audience. I grew up in Nebraska. I wasn't always vegan. I ate animals. I know what Nebraska life is in a farm town, in a farming community. And, um, reading books by Melanie Joy, you realize just how bad people have been socially conditioned. We're just following behaviors, and it's just part of our normal day, and we don't even think about questioning them because we don't have to. We can just live our day, and our day is nice, and we think it's so peaceful, but we don't really have to think about the consequences that's on our plate. I'm trying to get people to look more into that, and so that's what
Mm.
I do with the LTEs.
Mm, very nice. And so I'm wondering, when you're saying we should comment on online articles, and tips for that, is it better to agree with the author and sort of cheerlead the author, maybe add another point, help embellish even further what they wrote? Or should we challenge them a bit to sort of get a more engagement and a dialogue going, and to boost the algorithm, even maybe to spark more questions and dialogue? What would you suggest?
Well, when you read it, you want to respond honestly, and you you want to go you want to when you read it, every letter is going to be different. So I can't say there's a specific approach. I mean, this person that wrote the letter that you're the article that you're responding to, they could have totally missed a lot of things, and so you want to bring that out. You can just comment on that really quick. So uh, there's no real narrow approach to it. Just go with what feels right. But again, just try to remember. Sometimes after you've been vegan so long, I've been vegan 10 plus years. Sometimes after you've been vegan so long and you've known this information, that when you share it, you kind of expect people just to grasp it really quick. So you have to sow seeds, you have to be considerate, and you have to be empathetic to where they're at and compassionate to where they're at in their lives too.
Mm, that's great. Can you give us an example of leaving a Google review for a business? Like, what would be the goal of that? Also, it's also to raise awareness, right? Get it out into the public. So if you have an example of would you keep that short when you leave a review?
um, well, short or long, it's up to you what you want to do. I mean, all right, say you go to a restaurant and they had limited vegan options. Praise them for having vegan options, encourage them to have more vegan options. Stuff like that. The more you talk about it, it gets into conversation. The more people see that. It's part of a Google review. It's in there, and attach pictures of the vegan food that you had or whatever. So again, it's different. I use Google reviews as harassing activism. I go after corporations with through the Humane League, and that just basically entitles, or what that encompasses is companies who've made a public pledge to go 100% cage free, and they're lagging behind. So we're just hitting them up all the time saying, hey, when are you going to get this cage free policy? So we're commenting on everything that they have, we go after. So
And what about responding to trolls in a comment thread? Do you recommend that? It depends, of course. I know it really depends. If you engage at all, what would be an example of an effective response?
yeah, identifying someone as a troll, that's pretty quick and it's subjective. There's many different layers of people. Again, you have to empathize and love people. You have to realize there's different layers. Yes, that person may be in the act of trolling. They may be saying things that are discomforting that you don't like, but don't let that detour how you are going to treat them with integrity. Stay with it, respond politely. I think there's a guy that's on Instagram. It's called Empty Cages Now or something. He was like a deer hunter, and he's an ex deer hunter. And he said the reason he went vegan, from what I remember, the reason he went vegan is because he read a vegan's responses to trolls being polite, accurate, informative, and that's what that's
Mm.
what caught his attention.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's something we can adapt across the board more. Just healthy communication, healthy, respectful communication skills that certainly wins people over. Definitely Melanie Joy is a good one to follow if folks want to improve their writing and speaking, communication skills. So there is a question from the comments section for you. Do you have a favorite LTE that you've gotten published? Maybe one that had a really great response from the readers or editor or otherwise meant a lot to you? And that's from Ray.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, yeah, there is an LT I had published. I can't think of the name of it right now, but how I set it up was super cool. And I set up a scenario of kind of kind of describing, a lady walks into a veterinarian hospital, and she is her animal, her cat is has some damage done to it, and she's getting some pain medications for this animal, and they prescribe pain medications for this animal, and she keeps coming back though with the same animal, and there's different injuries, and she's always requesting prescriptions to narcotics and stuff. Finally, the veterinarian says, we're taking possession of this cat because we think something's going on here, that you're misusing these. And then I had questions, and I, I'm not going to ruin my LTE by trying to remember all my questions, but I had thought provoking questions that got that would basically, it trapped people in the sense that if they're using reasoning thinking, which that's what I'm using, that if they answer these questions this way, and then it went into talking about veganism, and it was so effective that it got published in like 4 newspapers in Nebraska. So I was like, yeah, that's right. That's cool. And I only
Nice.
use that as an example because I was an alcohol and drug counselor. And unfortunately, those kinds of things did really exist in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you happen to remember the title of that article? So, because I know folks are going to want to look for that one particularly,
I
or no?
know. Well, you should have given me a heads up. Yeah,
Put
well,
you on
we
the
never
spot.
know what questions are going to come in. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, you
I
only
have,
had 75
I
letters. I
know
mean,
exactly. I
why
don't,
can't we expect you to know every single title?
damn
No,
it.
I'm just kidding. But we're putting it in the chat, I believe, anyway, so that people can find it. And we're certainly open still for more questions for Robert from folks. If you'd like to, please let's keep it on topic and always keep it polite and respectful. But I was going to ask you that you just mentioned being a drug and alcohol counselor, your experience with that, and you say that has informed your writing style and activism. I guess there's some overlap of skill set that you use for both, and one sort of feeding into the other. Can you say a little bit more about how that background plays into your writing activism?
Yeah, absolutely. Having good communication skills that are respectful of both people. And always remember that, because sometimes it's not what you say. Most of the times, it's not what you say in a conversation that people are really going to remember. It's how they felt they were treated. And if they felt they were treated respectfully, even if they didn't give an indication that they gave two shits of what you said, I still think that plants seeds.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It is true. They do say that. They may not remember your words, but they'll remember how you made them feel from every
Right.
interaction. So that's important for us to keep in mind. And that's sort of, I wanted to ask you as well, because you talk about the difference between objective, factual writing and subjective and objective writing, and we want folks to, the way to learn that is practice, practice, practice. Start writing these letters and practice and get some feedback on these. And here at AAC, we have mentors. We have some mentors who also are writers, and we'll be happy to look at, what somebody might write and give some feedback around that. But activists and animal advocates are so emotional and passionate. That's what drives them into this in the first place. So what tips might you give highly emotional, highly volatile, for all the right reasons, activists on how they can not dampen that, but channel it differently so that your writing is factual, objective versus just emotional and opinion, as you were saying.
Well, again, it always is empathy. We've all been socially conditioned. And I mean, it wasn't until I was 40 that I knew anything about veganism. And when I found out about it and I researched it, I was mad. And so I was mad that no one had told me. And because I knew there was opportunities. There's people I knew that were vegetarian, but they never really told me why. And so once I became vegan, and I realized there was a greater need for the world to get out of this this violent or these violent behaviors that just are basically just they're just practice without any you know scrutiny at all as to why they're doing what they're doing. But again, back to that, more focused on that question again. So when you read an article and you're going to respond to it, you might initially feel heated, like, oh, I am going to show this person, and just start writing. And you're like, oh yeah, what? I got this to counter. I got this to counter. And you're going to want to use stuff because your ego is on the line and you want to show them. Then just take a deep breath. And remember, during my presentation, I repeated that line twice because I kind of fumbled over it a little bit too. But I repeated that line, the importance of communicating person. Just literally think about this person that you do not know. Think about them as someone you love. And if you love someone, you do not want to harm them. You want to present something that you think is in their best interest, and it's best going to be absorbed by them to make meaningful change. You want to flush your ego and go, you know what? I have all this shit I know. Flush that ego, and stay on task. So that's why there's that reminder. I say, and I need to use it for myself because when you're reading through my LTEs, you're going to be like, Robert did not follow this. Yes, I did not. So as I was practicing for this presentation, and I'm like, dang it, I really need to take those sentences and filter them through every LTE that I present. So from now forward, I'm going to do that. So
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Okay, great. So, you mentioned plagiarism, and we want to, of course, avoid plagiarism when we're writing. And my understanding of plagiarism is you must change both the words and the sentence structure when paraphrasing, or do you more so recommend to use the exact words when applicable and cite and quote? And if you're, do you cite? And if you cite, how do you cite? Like at the bottom of the article, you just go to a particular type of citing. Yeah.
in my presentation, I don't know if you caught it, but I would recommend citing it within the article itself.
Okay.
So, for example, the Academy of Nutrition, blah blah blah, says if you cite that in the article, but you also you put that in the link when you submit it to the LT, when you submit it to the or the editor of the newspaper. So that's how you do it. That's how you do it professionally. That's how some of my editors have trained me to do it. Because I love working with my editors. Some of them, it's like a love hate relationship because they're like, Robert, I think I've already reminded you we're not going to do letters on this and this. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I'll be sure to remember next time and stuff. And but he works with me, and just the fact that he took his time to reach out to me to let me know that that's the hold up, that if I rewrite it, he would print it. And that to me is the love hate because, you know, he still likes to, I don't know, he still wanted to do it. And, but he often says he doesn't have time, but yet he always reaches out to me. So I always share that.
All right, we got a good question. Another good question here from Jennifer
All right,
Steger.
Jennifer.
Ah, how can I write a persuasive LTE in only 150 words while still keeping the integrity of my message?
Uh,
It's a
I don't
challenge.
know. I don't know. That might be a Chat GPT question. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would even. I don't know. I don't know if I would even think of that. Again, it comes down to you just let the articles come to you. You know, when you see an article, you're going to know how your best angle and approach is going to be. Is it going to be persuasive? I don't know. Maybe that article is, maybe not. Um, so 150 words is, yeah, that's really, really low. So,
Is that's what is the average? Is the average like that might be the lowest maximum for papers, right? 150 up to 500 you said, right?
that's the
Typically somewhere in
lowest.
that range.
Yeah, that's the lowest I have ever seen. I don't think I've ever submitted it that low. The lowest I've ever submitted, I think, is 200. 250 seems to be the going thing. And I think editors are doing that because they're like, dang, we got a backlog of LTEs and there's only so much space. Uh, let's put a cap, you know? And so there's always that. And sometimes it's interesting, like online, like the Lincoln Journal Star, it says their cap is at 250, 250. But if I talk to the editor himself, he's like, Robert, you can do it at 300. So sometimes you can get away. I
Nice.
have a friend, Kathleen, who lives in the New York area, And I don't know how she does this, but she gets LTEs that are published in about 1,200 to 1,500 words. And that's the newspaper does it for her. And I'm just like, wow, that is powerful. And she's always like, should I go less? And I'm like, well, I don't know any newspapers will allow me to go that high. Even if I have an opt ed, it's usually capped at 300. So go with it.
Mm. Wow. So sometimes, again, it goes to having a positive working relationship with the editors, and a rapport that you build maybe over time. And there's some wiggle room that they'll let you, have more valuable, precious characters, precious words, and sentences in there because it behooves them to have something well written and something compelling, in their paper. So pretty interesting. But we are
Yeah, that's
definitely
why I
in the
said
era of, go ahead.
that's why I said build a civil relationship, a
Yeah.
civil, simple relationship with your editor, and it pays off.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you mentioned Chat GPT in this era of AI. So do you utilize that, and how are there any tips for folks to utilize Chat GPT? I think you said as maybe checking your editing first, putting it in there. There's a way to do that, right? Or should you take answers and use them verbatim? Is that legal? I mean, is that plagiarism when you take from Chat GPT without changing it, or you have to change it or change a certain amount?
My activism for animals all revolves around honesty. So that is how I proceed. And when I use ChatGPT, I gave you that specific question. Basically, can you check for any writing errors without destroying authorship? And I think that is comfortable to do. I haven't used that yet, but I making this presentation, I knew ChatGPT was going to be coming up because when I started doing this, ChatGPT was not available. But now you can use, I call it abuse ChatGPT when they can just write it all up for you. So with that question of Robert, how can I write a persuasive, um, LTE in less than 150 words? You could ask ChatGPT to do it, and it will do it. And if you feel okay doing that, then I guess you can do that. But I just feel like the whole animal uh, welfare or the animal agriculture industry is based on secrecies and lies, and the best way for me to disintegrate that is through staying true all the time. And if I stay consistently true all the time, even people that will disagree with me will say, well, he's always true all the time. He's always honest. So I
Yeah,
stick with that.
I like that as a motto, as a way of being with this and walking the walk, right? That we would love for the rest of the world to, especially those who are hurting animals. We need to be the change, as we say, and put that good energy out there. So we'll wrap up in just a bit, though. Maybe we're still open for maybe one more question. Is that okay, Robert? And one or two.
Absolutely.
I have a question that is, do you think about the article being searchable in advance? Like, do you deliberately put keywords in there that will be, the tags that people will be looking for your type of article, or you don't think about that?
I have never thought about that.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's the honest truth. I've never thought about that. I suppose that could be a good thing to think about too.
Yeah.
And you could even identify which of those tags are popular right now in LTEs or articles by using ChatGPT and then incorporate those in your letter and still be legit. Sounds good to me.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So not seeing any other questions, but I wanted to ask you before too long. You wrote your book,
Yeah.
and what do you want to tell us about? Tell us a little bit about your book, why you wrote it, a little bit about what it's about, and where folks can find it.
All right. So I do have a YouTube channel that has a video that explains why I wrote my book way better than what I'm going to do now because it's 7 minutes long. But okay, so my writing my book started it the desire and then started when I was taking a lifespan development class at Southeast Community College to get my degree as an alcohol and drug counselor. I had to write a short biography about myself in accordance to Eric Erickson's psychosocial theory, and which has 8 stages. And when I submitted it, I got an A+, and it got shared around with other teachers, and other teachers were like, "Oh my gosh, Robert, you got to come back to our class and share your story and as an example on how to write a really good, um, you know, biography about the Eric in according to Eric Erickson's theory." So I would go back multiple times over and over. And then every time I'd go back, there was at least one student that would be like, "So when are you going to write your book?" And so I was like, I will. I created a desire through this research to do this, so I will. So so as an activist, I was busy, right? And busy doing activism. And then COVID hit. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. This is the perfect time to start writing a book. And so, even though I have 75 LTEs published since 2019, I did take off a year from doing any publishing of anything. And all I did was like hermit in my house to brainstorm all these things, open up folders in my mind, starting in my life in a chronological order. And so it's an it's obviously an autobiography about my life. And so I did all that, and I was working with a publisher because my sister published her autobiography also, and so I was working with that publisher, and I got done and I submitted it to the publisher, and they're like, "Well, it's you're gonna have to give us $5,000 to publish it." And so I was like, "Not, I'm not doing that. That is that is red tape suicide for me to give you $5,000 to publish." So I didn't publish it. I published it in a very sneaky way. I just published it as a PDF, right? And I I sold it for a little bit of money as a PDF to help me recoup some of the publishing, or I didn't have any publishing costs, but I sold it and I gave it away. And then I found another publisher, and the other publisher was great. They worked with me, and so I went with them, got it published into a book form. So I have it in paperback, hardbook, e-back on Amazon. I have it in paperback on Barnes and Noble. I do book signings at Barnes and Noble here locally in Nebraska, which my caregiver Austin helps me out with. And I decided to make it an audiobook, um, available for anyone who, I mean, anyone that wants to read it and they don't even want to pay for it. I don't care if you like, "I'll read it, but I don't want to pay for it." That's okay. I'm not offended. So I'll make it. I'll give you a free PDF version. If you go to my book website, you can get it that way. You can go to my YouTube channel, and I have an audiobook. The audiobook is rough and raw, kind of like my book, but that's okay because I did the audiobook myself. And so I'm the author reading it. So there's not very many authors that read their own audiobook that make the time to do it. I did. And then another thing to point out is all the author's profits of my book go to 21 January Animal Sanctuary in Clinton, Missouri. The reason I know about this is because I work with Tim, who's one of my activists. He's a fellow friend activist. His daughter owns that animal sanctuary. And me being having a disability and caregivers, it's a red tape suicide if I'm making any side money like that. And I'm like, so I want to sell my book, but I'm looking for someone that wants to take the money for it. So I'm like, well, I'm going to find an animal sanctuary. And so that's how it works. So buy my book, goes to all the profits go to an animal sanctuary. Again, if you're stubborn, you don't want to buy it, I'll send you a free copy, and I won't even. I'll totally welcome you sending a free copy to you.
I love it. I love it. What a wonderful way to pay it forward for the animals. But give us the name of your book again and tell us your YouTube channel.
Spoken, a memoir sprinkled with a little quadriplegia. I thought it was a very fun, catchy name with a little bit of humor behind it. So, and my channel is just at Robert A. Rieck Jr.
Okay. All right, great. Hopefully we'll put that in the comments. So let's just take one last question and then we'll see if you have any final words for folks. Have you ever written a response to an LTE? That's from Skyjack Morgan.
Have I ever written a response to someone's LTE? No, I don't think so. I've done just articles.
Okay. I'm sure you'll probably have the opportunity now where you look for it. So I think this is a whole new avenue for folks. And, in the comment section, you guys, how is this landing for you? Is this sound like something that is really doable for you? Is it something that's already speaking to your natural talents? Are you finding, because at AAC, we always want people to find their niche, find what you really resonate with, what you love to do, and couple that with your activism. Anything can be a form of activism. Anything done with integrity, as you said, positivity and respect, and with the animals, certainly front and center. So, Robert, do you have any final words for the next generation of activists, or just anything else you want to summarize or highlight on this topic tonight?
I don't know. I always end all my presentations or all my communications with a lot of friends and activists with vegan peace and love.
Mm-hmm. Vegan peace and love. That's a perfect way to end. Thank you, Robert. I hope folks will check out Robert's YouTube channel and buy his book that goes to animal sanctuaries, and reach out to him or to us if you have any questions on that. So thank you, Robert, so much. So as we wrap up, for as little as $2 a month, please support AAC through Patreon. We can continue to provide free educational resources that way. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or a mentee or want to get involved with AAC, please visit our website. We'll put that in the comment section as well. Please hit subscribe here on our channel. Smash that bell and give us a like. Please follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And my final words tonight are from Ingrid Newkirk. Each of us is a masterpiece of creation, if only we would open our eyes to see it. So this quote encourages activists to circle back to the animals. Animals are miraculous beings, don't you agree? Why anyone would choose to destroy such extraordinary divine creatures is beyond me. A world devoid of animals is an empty, vacuous notion indeed. So get out there, folks, and continue the good fight for animals. All right. Thank you very much. Until next time, stay well. AAC signing off.